Good morning, everybody. Could I just say thank you for letting me pray with you each council meeting, and assure you that even though I won't be here, I will always keep all of you, every one of you, in my prayers. Thank you. Let us pray. Creator God, at the start of a new municipal year, we seek your presence and your wisdom as this council sets goals and outcomes. We are sadly aware that one of the candidates in the recent elections suddenly passed away, and we pray he may rest in peace, and we remember those who mourn him. We give thanks for the work of all who have previously served this council, and for those new members who begin their new roles and responsibilities. We thank you for everyone seated here today, for each mind and heart that feels the presence of this room. We thank you. But only you truly know what this council are setting out to accomplish today. They have ideas, a vision and a plan. Collectively they have talents, abilities and time to work. However, only you can see in perfect detail the end of every beginning, every idea, every project. Nothing is ever in vain, for even mistakes can be used for good. We pray that you will forgive us our pride, the pride that puffs us up, and the pride that threatens to unqualify us. Strengthen our confidence in who you have made us to be. Set us free from comparison and division in order to work together efficiently for this great city of Salford. We pray that you bless this meeting today, all those present, as well as the lives of those affected by the decisions made today. Hear my prayers, guide, protect, and bless each and every one here, and those who cannot be present at this time. Amen.
Announcements of special business have not been notified of any other business. I was wondering if there's a trapdoor set.
That should be right up there.
Yeah, that's bad. Are there any apologies for absence? Any further apologies? Sorry. Says your mayor. Agreed. Declarations of interest. Can I ask any members with interest to now declare them?
Councillor Saunders.
Councillor Saunders.
Two rows up front.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to firstly, with regards to item 7, the membership of committees and panels, I'm down to be re-elected, should the council so choose, to the Committee for Health and Adult Social Care. I feel I ought to declare that I do have a small income as a chaplain to a care home that is under the supervision of Salford City Council. I'd also like to declare at this point that I am a candidate in the Euro elections next Thursday. And having said that, could I seek guidance either from the Chief Exec or the Monitoring Officer as to how the PERDA period that we are in currently will affect the proceedings of this council, and particularly as it would relate to my dear self. Thank you.
The PERDA period for the European elections should not impact on the business, the ordinary business of this council. if obviously any election comments or statements would be inappropriate, would be caught by PERDA. There are no items on this agenda that appear to me to fall within that category.
Minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of March 2019. Are the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of March approved as a correct record? Say aye. Anybody against? The ayes have it. Receipt of petitions, communications. Do you have any petitions that need to be received? Councillor Sharp.
So, petition on behalf of Mr. Colin Dulling, present in the room today, for a crossing on Manchester Road West, or the A6, Little Bolton.
Thank you. No other petitions? Notification of appointments of Cabinet. Councillor Bushnell.
Thank you. Could I just ask for this to be deferred in the absence of the Mayor? Hopefully we'll come to the next council meeting, but currently the Cabinet remains as is.
Councillor Saunders.
Councillor Saunders.
Would we not have to put that to the vote of the council to continue as is for another month? No? Okay.
Item 8. Appointments of representatives to outside bodies.
So it's item 7.
Oh, sorry. Oh, item 7. Membership committees and panels, including appointments of the chairs and deputy chairs for the municipal year 2019-20. This, Councillor Bushnell.
Propose this report, Chair.
Agreed?
Councillor Turner.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit in the dip here. I don't know what's happening. Regarding the panels, there's just a couple of amendments that I would like to put forward. Under SACRE, I should have included Councillor Collinson on that committee. So I would like, with the Council's approval, to do so now. And also on the Lowry, I would like to put Councillor Garrido on that one, if the Council were to approve that. She has served it in the past, but they're the only two that we need to worry about at this time. Thank you.
That's agreed. Is it 9?
So we're on item 8 now.
Oh, item 8. Appoint representatives to outside bodies. Councillor Bushnell.
That's Councillor Bushnell first, and then
Councillor
Turner.
Okay, thank you. Can I also propose this report, but I acknowledge there are still some to be confirmed on this, and they'll be brought back to the next meeting.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed there are a couple of vacancies on the Booth Charities, a charity that is one of the best that I've ever known. Is it possible that I could ask the Council's indulgence and propose Councillor Karen Garrido to sit on one of those vacancies?
Thank you. My understanding is this is in the gift of the Mayor. I'll certainly pass that information on to the Mayor when he returns.
I'm obliged. Thank you.
Yes, just on the outside bodies, I noticed we do have 3 vacancies for the GM scrutiny bodies, and you said appointments at the next meeting, which will be 2 months away. These bodies will start their work within the next month, and who we nominate. We're supposed to have one on each committee, and they'll need to know those names pretty soon, otherwise it's going to cause complications there, and there are very tight quorum rules. So I don't think that's something that can wait 2 months. I think that needs to be, those appointments need to be made by some route fairly soon.
I'll take that into consideration as well. Thank you, Councillor Jella.
Councillor Turner.
Councillor Turner.
Chair, I'm sorry to keep bobbing up and down here like a cork. We have already submitted our nominations for those bodies because we, like Councillor Jolly said, realise the importance of time. Actually, we've not made any changes to the previous year, so we hope that that can go through smoothly and swiftly. Thank you.
We'll continue. So we can make amendments at a later stage.
Yeah, can I just clarify that? Is that all right, Chair?
Okay, go on.
So just to clarify that then, the nominated people in the report are the nominated people, and then so they will continue as the nominations if the council approve it. Although the vacancies that are in the report will be filled by the City Mayor at a later date, and those comments are noted about filling those posts swiftly in terms of before the next 2 months.
Council needs to approve the report.
It's just a correction. On the Greater Manchester Health Scrutiny Committee, it says that the members must be members of Cabinet, non-exec members of Cabinet or Executive. They must not be Cabinet or non-exec members. So that needs a correction. Oh, sorry.
That's agreed.
So we just need we need to get them to agree the report. So
Is that agreed that our report as it is with the amendments?
thank you.
Item 9, Greater Manchester Transport Committee. The assistant is asked to present the role and responsibilities of the Greater Manchester Transport Committee, which I will permit members to ask questions. Any questions?
I think I probably need to speak to it.
Right, that's fine.
Yes, Chair, thank you for that. The report outlines the current arrangements for the GM transport governance, and in the context of the devolution agreement and specifically the GMCA Transport Order number 3, it puts out some broad revised terms of reference for a reconstituted GM Transport Committee, options for the structure and responsibilities and examples of how it might work in practice. Firstly, the Council is asked to approve the establishment of the new GM Transport Committee as a joint committee of the 10 districts and the GMCA and Mayor. Secondly, to approve the terms of reference and the operating agreement for the committee as set out in Schedule 1 of the report. Thirdly, to delegate the functions as set out in the terms of reference to the Transport Committee, and to appoint as appropriate the executive support for transport to the committee for 2019-20.
Thank you. Councillor Critchley.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wanting to ask a question of Councillor Jones, actually, whether he believes the new Transport Committee could be better at dealing with Greater Manchester bus operators. I've long griped and raised concerns about bus services in the west of the city. It is a major concern for residents in Walton, and they don't seem to be getting better. So just wondering whether Councillor Jones thinks this new structure, this new committee will actually improve things.
Councillor Gredo.
Yeah, first of all, we do welcome the report because I think it is necessary that a streamlining that can be done is actually done. And I think this is something this report tackles. I am still concerned, however, that we get the maximum opportunity as a council to put forward our views on bus services, and Councillor Critchley has already mentioned those a few minutes ago. So I think if we just bear that in mind as members to make sure that we channel them through this new system. I don't need to declare them just because I'm not actually going to be one of the new members. I decided other people should have that opportunity. But having said that, can I just seek assurance, and I know Stockport Council did raise this matter some months ago, that the opposition members from across Greater Manchester are in fact to be nominated by the opposition and not by the Greater Manchester Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. I think we can give that assurance, Councillor Greedle, because I think that's every intention. But I'm sure the legal position can be explained to you in more detail. But I think the GM Mayor has to formally make that decision. But having said that, as I understand it, is agreed that the Conservative Party, for example, will nominate, and the Liberal Democrats will nominate, and then it will be agreed. As far as Councillor Critchley is concerned, it's quite a good question, that, because I think what Councillor Critchley is getting at is that bus services in Salford, right across the board, certainly in his area of Walkden. I'm currently dealing with residents on the Brookhouse estate in Eccles who are very upset about current levels of bus services and some of the changes recently. And what will the effect of the new committee be? Well, this new committee, as you know, has been under discussion for quite a long time, and it is time it was settled. But one of the distinct differences, I suppose, is that the GM Mayor, Andy Burnham, will be a member of this committee for the first time, and I think that's got to be a huge advantage, because at the end of the day, he's the elected Mayor for Greater Manchester, he's in charge of transport, and the fact he's now on the GM Transport Committee, I think will help us in dealing with the problems we've got. I won't go through all the problems, but I think you know that when it comes to rail, we've had 18 months of a complete disaster, and that's still happening now. The reports we get back of cancelled trains and so on a weekly basis are quite alarming, really. And on bus services, this is going to be the big crunch issue that we'll all have to face up to. We haven't run bus services in this city since 1986, which is a long, long time ago. And as you know, during the whole of that period till now, London and the Mayor of London has control of the network. In Greater Manchester, the bus operators have control of the network. And as far as I know, the GM Mayor, Andy Burnham, will be making a statement, certainly in the next couple of months, about how we intend to tackle that situation. So I don't want to try and second guess what he's going to say, but what I hope he's going to say is that the public and the local authorities should be the ones who determine the bus network, and the bus operators should be the ones who then operate that network in line with what we want, not in line with what they want. Now, I'm hoping that that's the kind of announcement we'll get, and then Walkden and other areas will have a much better say in the provision of buses.
Agree the recommendations. Can we agree the recommendations? Agreed? Say aye. And the ayes have it. Results of the local elections, 2nd of May 2019. The monitoring officer is asked to present the results of the local elections, which I'll permit members to ask questions. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. The results of the May local elections are set out. There is one election that remains to take place in Walkden South, and a date has been set for that, and I can't remember when it is because I've just got back, 20th of June. Unless there's any questions, I think the report is just for noting.
Just to add, just to welcome the newly elected councillors to the chamber.
Yes, Councillor Garrido.
It's not a question, it's actually a comment. I would just like to thank, on behalf of the Conservative group and the Conservative Party, our thanks that this council expressed over the loss of one of our members. Our officers were absolutely fantastic and have been very supportive, and I'd like to thank people like Councillor Critchley and other people who have been very to what we've actually had to go through. It was a difficult election for us because, of course, it happened so quickly. But I would just like to, I just thought we needed to say thank you very much to everybody on the council who have actually pressed on their sympathy, and it's really was appreciated by us all. So thank you very much indeed.
Council is asked to note this report. Agreed. Item 11, Standards Committee Annual Report.
Yes, Chair. Council is required to receive an annual report summarising the work undertaken by the Standards Committee, and this report is for Council to receive. There's quite a lot of information in it, and I'm sure that I'm more than happy to take any questions. There is an independent chair of the Council Standards Committee who does not attend council meetings, but I'm sure that members of the Standards Committee would be happy to take questions if there is anything that you felt more appropriate for them than for me.
Councillor asked to note the report.
Councillor Garrido.
Councillor Garrido.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say I do hope that all councillors will read this. It is an important committee, and I think it is chaired very well by the independent member, who's a very knowledgeable lady and who has actually brought, I think, quite a lot to this committee. Her report is very thorough, and I think that we should hopefully take on board a lot of what is inside it. And can I thank Miranda Cuthers-Watts for her support on this committee and for her quick typing when we're trying to do notes of what we've been discussing, which isn't easy when Councillor Lewis and I are on that committee. So I think thank you very much indeed, and can we make thanks to the independent chair, I think, who's been excellent, and the independent members on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 12, noted of a motion to be moved by Councillor Carranza and seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. It is a great pleasure speaking to you about this motion in connection with the massacre in Tumba in Burundi. Thank you for giving this opportunity to move a motion in connection with this massacre which happened few years ago. To give a little bit of a snapshot of the situation, the Banyamulenge are Tutsi background who live on the high plateau of South Kivu in Democratic Republic of Congo. Banyamulenge have been prosecuted people since colonial time, and undergone systematic exclusion and discrimination, and at some point were made stateless by the government. In 13 August 2004, there was a massacre at the Gatumba refugee camp in Burundi under the UN protection, UNHCR, where 166 people were killed, and all the victims were burned alive. Children and adults were all Banyamulenge. The attack was claimed by a force of armed combatants from FNL, predominantly from Hutu background, a movement known as Hostile to Minority Tutsi. Agato Gwasa claimed to have committed those atrocities on BBC, on Voice of America, is now the current Deputy Speaker of the Burundian Parliament. Furthermore, FNL is believed to be behind a series of other attacks, including Titanic Express, where 21 people were killed, including Charlotte Wilson, who was an aid worker in Rwanda, and his boyfriend, who is from Burundi, Tutsi background. The other ones who were in the same Titanic Express bus, who were from different backgrounds, were not killed. The most Reverend Monsignor Michael Kutne, originally from Ireland, was killed on the 29th of December, and he was the Pope representative in Burundi. He was instrumental to achieve a Arusha peace agreement between the Burundian government and the major Hutu opposition, which kept Burundi in peace since 2005 to 2015. More than 60 Banyamulenge people now live in Salford. They are settled here under the Gateway Protection Program, which is an arrangement between the UK government and the UNHCR. We thank this council for supporting and providing support in commemoration which the Banyamulenge do every year here in Salford. I'm here standing before you, seeking to support this motion, because I believe this council is known to be at the forefront of fighting for social justice, not only in the UK and also abroad, and also fighting to advance human rights. Thank you so much.
Councillor John Ferguson, to second.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure many people are thinking it's a just motion, but what's it got to do with this council? What's it got to do with Salford? Along with you, Mr. Chair, we went to a commemoration event in Pattycroft last August to commemorate the 14th anniversary of that massacre, 15th this August, 15 years ago. I must admit that when I went to that meeting, I was expecting a very small gathering and was actually amazed at the number of people that were there, refugees from that massacre who'd come to Britain. The Banyamulenge people are actually spread around the world, but many of them are residents here in Salford. And it's because of those people that are living in Salford now that have made Salford and Greater Manchester their home that I think it's important that we send a message out of support to them. Support for them in the fight for justice, and also showing that we welcome them to this area. And I make that point particularly with not wanting to make a political point, but we've got European elections going on at the moment, and I'm not talking about you, Councillor Saunders, but there are people as candidates in that election were promoting racism and discrimination. And I think it's an important message from this council that that isn't something that we as a council, we see Salford as a diverse and tolerant society. So it's with that in mind that I'm seconding the motion, and also calling us, because there are people who've been responsible for these massacres who are seats still free, that we should be pressing the British government to pursue those people in the international courts and that they're brought to justice. So I second the motion.
Thank you. As you rightly said, I was at that meeting, and I must declare, it's unusual, but I must declare an interest. A lot of those people are my personal friends, and what they've been through is unbelievable. Thank you. Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we don't need to say a lot to that. The motion gives a full explanation of the circumstances. I'd like to thank, on behalf of the group, the two members for the motion that is in front of us today. Regretfully, there are too many such cases all over the world, some still ongoing. There's just too many to list. But my group, and I know Her Majesty's Government, condemn all such acts, and we will be supporting the motion in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. Again, there isn't really anything to debate about the motion. I would like to support it, especially taking into consideration that my country at the moment, the country of Ukraine, is going through a brother killing brother war that we say has no point, is pointless. And I was raised in a country that the main ideology was into brothers and sisters across the world, solidarity. That's what I grew up with. And now, as I interpret in immigration courts, I hear young people and older people, well, middle-aged people, refusing to go to war, saying, I don't want to fight my brothers whom I sat in the same classroom at the same desk. And I heard a story that actually, literally, two brothers ended up on different sides, and they were fighting against each other again. We don't even know what for and why. And I guess this motion is important for all of us to consider what we are thinking as humans about others. Is their skin slightly different color? Is their accent slightly different? Is their hair different texture? It is, I believe, very important for us, obviously, not to debate this motion, but to think, especially at this time, how important it is to just stand together as humans, support each other, and celebrate each other's differences. I support the motion.
Councillor Fletcher.
Immigrants. I believe it is our duty to challenge words of hatred at the very outset to prevent such massacres that we've heard of today. There are far more people in society who are caring, tolerant and welcoming, and their voices must always be heard above those voices which are filled with hatred and bigotry. I also hope that in this time of increased hostility to immigrants, that Salford is truly welcoming to these 60 refugees. Salford has a reputation for being a warm, friendly and welcoming city. Indeed, Salford welcomed my Jewish ancestors from Lithuania in 1870 and my dad from Ireland in 1958. Salford gave him what his hometown of Dublin could never have done. Till the day he died, he loved Salford, and I would say at the end of the day, he loved Salford as much as his hometown, Dublin. Well, almost as much. I fully support the motion, and I'm really glad that it was brought today. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. All those against? That has been carried. Statements for the statutory deputy city mayor, Councillor, well, it's Councillor Bushell.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to reflect on the tragic events in Sri Lanka and the senseless attack on its people, churches, Christian worshippers and visitors. On behalf of the City Mayor and residents of Salford, I want to extend our deepest sympathies to all those affected. We understand the grief of people in Sri Lanka and of those families who tragically lost loved ones while visiting this beautiful country from across the world. It will be the second anniversary of the devastating attack at Manchester Arena on the 22nd of May, which changed people's lives forever. Our thoughts and prayers remain with families and friends who lost loved ones and those still suffering physically and mentally. We stand in solidarity with all those countries affected by such horrific acts, by those that seek to destroy our way of life. I'd also like to take a minute to pay tribute to George Andrew Darlington, who died following a short illness a few days before the local election. George was standing for the Conservative Party in Walkden South, and our thoughts and prayers are with his family and friends at this difficult time. I'd especially like to send our condolences to his partner Anne, who also stood as a candidate. In the local elections. George was much loved and well-respected member of the community, as is Anne. I'd like now to congratulate all our new councillors on their election victories. I'm sure you'll serve the people of this city to the best of your ability, and I look forward to working with you all. I'd like to thank everyone involved, in particular the elections team, for running such a well-organised local election. Members of the council will also be aware that Peter Taylor lost his seat at the local election and will appreciate how hard local councillors work for their residents in the best interests of the people they serve. Peter was dedicated to the people of Earlham, and I know he'll continue to work hard. Peter will be very much missed. It's also important that we recognise the Islamic holy month of Ramadan, with Muslims observing the fast and religious obligations and making plans for the festival of Eid. Once again, Salford returned to Labour Council. I want to thank the people of Salford for focusing on local issues that matter to them. As a Labour Council, with Paul Dennett leading, they can be assured that we'll continue to stand up for those that are unable to protect. Sorry, I got a little upset at the motion. We'll continue to stand up for those that are unable to protect themselves against a government that continues to ravage the very services our most vulnerable residents need. However, this is our AGM, and I want to use this statement as an opportunity to raise awareness of the positive work that, despite the cuts, we have done in Salford. The City Mayor and Councillor Kelly, lead member for housing, continue to develop programmes in line with the City Mayor's priority to tackle the need for more affordable homes. We've almost 6,000 households on the Council House Register. And it's not an understatement to say we're in the middle of a housing crisis. The delivery of affordable units in the city has been running at approximately 280 a year. We need 630. We're looking at all possible ways to reduce this gap in conjunction with a range of housing partners across the council. This includes the potential for the council to deliver new homes, and we're working on a number of projects with a view to seeing some schemes on site this year. Overseeing the Dureve business plan is the chair, Councillor John Merritt. We are excited that building work has started on Duchy Road to provide a mix of affordable and social rented houses. This is the first step to delivering a pipeline of truly affordable and social rented houses. The city's partners understand how vital new social housing is to the city, and the City Mayor and Councillor Kelly recently attended the launch of Archon Housing Group's new social housing development in Boothstown. It's unbelievable in this day and age that there are 39 bids made for each affordable home that's advertised. Providing affordable homes to local people and help create new communities across the city remains at the heart of our priorities. I'm delighted to report that the bid led by Salford Council officers has been successful in securing significant funding for the recent bidding round for the rapid rehousing pathway. This is a key part of the council's approach to ensure that those who sleep rough or are at risk of rough sleeping rapidly get the wraparound support they need, from the streets through to sustained accommodation. Our thanks go to Social Housing, the Housing Advice Team and Councillor Kelly for this successful bid in helping to tackle rough sleeping and homelessness. A Bed Every Night has worked to deliver accommodation with support to every rough sleeper in the city region every night of the week since the start of November. Overall, 1,423 individuals have been accommodated. Of those, 480 people, over a third, have moved on to a more suitable housing solution. Locally, Salford has accommodated 291 people and successfully supported 78 into a sustainable housing solution. The Greater Manchester Mayor has announced the Bed for Every Night scheme will be extended to the 31st of May. The supported housing team continue to deliver this phenomenal service for some of our most vulnerable and challenged members of our communities. Salford's approach is being held up as best practice in Greater Manchester. Members will also be aware that this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. We've all been touched in some way by the devastating effects of poor mental health. The loss of our much-loved former councillor, Paul Longshaw, reminds us as how important it is that we support each other and ensure there are services for people experiencing mental health issues. Paul Longshaw's daughter, Ella, will be running in the Salford 10K in September to raise funds in her dad's memory for CALM, the campaign against living miserably. Ella's story is on the Salford CVS website, and I'd urge people to support Ella and the organisations dedicated to helping our most vulnerable residents. In 2017 to 18, around 36,300 adults are estimated to have depression or anxiety in Salford. Of those, 2,620 adults in Salford had depression recorded for the first time. These figures are likely to be an underestimate because not everyone who could benefit has sought help. Around 10% of 5 to 16-year-olds in Salford have sought help for mental health problems. The most common presenting factors identified by young people as affecting their mental health and emotional well-being were bullying, money management, running away from home, general anxiety, stress and threats of violence. Many of the risk factors associated with mental health are high in Salford. These include lifestyle factors such as smoking, excess alcohol consumption, material deprivation, poor physical health, and demographic factors such as ethnicity. Salford has an increasingly diverse population with high levels of deprivation and high levels of need for mental health services. Given that it is Mental Health Awareness Week, I know Councillor Hamilton may want to say a few words following this. We all know what an incredible job foster parents do for our vulnerable and troubled young people. The continued recruitment of foster carers is vital in providing much needed stability, and it's important to acknowledge their commitment to the children and young people of Salford. Cabinet members have supported and approved a 40% rise in their skills payment. We would encourage new foster carers to come forward to enable us to increase the choice of placements for children and young people who need support and a loving home. We currently have 226 fostering households caring for 336 children. We desperately need more carers each year to meet the demand. In March, I gave my annual report on anti-poverty work, including our intended focus on pension poverty. This is important that we continue to raise awareness of this very serious issue. According to the Department for Work and Pension Statistics, 40% of those that can claim pension credit nationally do not. And this rises to 50% for couples, with only 10% of eligible people within BAME populations claiming. Each of the 1.3 million households who don't take up pension credit lose on average £2,500 a year. Applying this to the Salford population, up to 5,180 people are not taking up this offer and they're entitled to it. This could be more than 12 million in unclaimed pension credit citywide. The Council's Health Improvement Service are working in collaboration with Welfare Rights, Debt Advice Team, our Council Tax Benefit Team and DWP to deliver an outreach and engagement campaign to encourage take-up of pension credit by our residents who may be missing out. We're continuing to grow the city, and new development continues to bring in jobs, business opportunities and homes. The offices at 1 New Bailey are already let, and now one of Manchester's oldest global legal practices, Evershed Sutherland's, have agreed a pre-let at 2 New Bailey, which is due to be completed next year. Work has also started on 3 New Bailey to create a regional centre for Her Majesty's Customs and Revenue. Around 2,400 civil servants will move to their new home by spring 2022. This will front a new high-quality public square. Members will be aware of the developments taking shape at RHS Bridgewater Gardens. As well as providing a spectacular garden, RHS continues to work alongside the Council and is committed to delivering benefits to Salford, including jobs. The project will create more than 140 jobs in the garden and a further 180 in the local economy by 2029. And there will be opportunities for local people to learn new skills through training, apprenticeships and volunteering. Initial direct investment of 30 million will add 13.8 million per year to the local economy by 2029. And currently 22 green space projects are being delivered through the Garden Bridgewater Community Outreach Team. There are 5 community green space projects which have been funded through Growwell, a collaboration between the Bridgewater Gardens, Salford CVS and Salford Clinical Commissioning Group. There are 7 community gardens supported through the Greening Great Britain initiative, including the Friends of Chimleypot Park, Langworthy and Seedley in Bloom, Worsley Woods Action Group and Peeled Patches in Little Hulton. Many council services do continue to provide an excellent service, and given its annual meeting, I thought it'd be good to highlight a few achievements. We've retained the Customer Service Excellent accreditation for our bereavement, grounds maintenance, refuse and recycling, vehicle management and pest control services. Our bereavement services team has achieved the Association for Public Service Excellent Best Team of the Year award against all other services across the country. Our school meals service has provided over 2.5 million healthy, nutritious meals to Salford children in the last 12 months. And our parks team have achieved 5 Green Flag Awards for our key parks and cemeteries across the city, recognising quality maintenance and management of these sites. Our refuse and recycling revised collection service will see over £1 million saved in a full year and residual waste reduced by over 4,000 tonnes. And this has increased recycling by 5% in the last 12 months. Our vehicle management service keep the council's fleet of vehicles in the city moving with our expert team of mechanics. During Litter Pick Week, 52 groups from schools to Friends of the Park and community groups took part all over Salford and collected over 1,500 bags of litter. It was a fantastic response from wonderful community-minded people. As there's no meeting of the full council before Armed Forces Week, I'd like to raise awareness of the 2 events we have planned to celebrate our Armed Forces community and their families. Firstly, Salford Armed Forces flag raising ceremony at Swinton Town Hall will be on Monday 24th of June from 10:30 a.m. Salford's Armed Forces Day takes place on Saturday 29th of June, starting with a parade from Duke's Drive, Monton, down Parring Lane to Winton Park, also starts at 10:30 a.m. And following the parade there'll be a family fun day at Winton Park. The fun day will feature entertainment, mini rides for young children, and there'll be lots to see and do around this beautiful park throughout the day. I'd also like to announce a new housing support service for members of the Armed Forces community and their families. The City Mayor has pledged funding for 12 months, and Rebecca Holden from Supported Tenancy Team is using her experience to offer anyone who has ever served with the Armed Forces as part of Salford City Council's commitment to supporting Armed Forces personnel and their families. I started this statement by congratulating members and thanking them for their dedication in wanting to make a difference for our residents across Salford. I want to end by thanking our exceptionally hard-working officers and the teams on the front line who go the extra mile on a daily basis. Our teachers and school staff, social workers, carers, welfare rights, health improvement workers, refuge collectors, road cleaners. There are so many. But also all of our officers, including those the public may not see, but are supporting others, including members of the vital support staff, our member services and mayoral office team, our exemplary professionals, and vital in keeping the cogs of this massive wheel turning. Thank you for listening. I am happy to answer any questions, but can I remind you that there is an opportunity to ask lead members later on the agenda, so please save any service-specific questions until then. Thank you.
Councillor Morris. Councillor Morris.
Sally was a GP in Salford, and she was then the Deputy Director of Public Health, along with Chrissy Pickin, and Councillor Mary and I knew very well. And she was a tremendous friend to me. And I think Salford has lost, she was always smiling, she always went the extra mile. And as Councillor Ferguson says, to preach hate when you lose somebody like the calibre of Sally and her husband is an absolute tragedy. So I just wanted to make that contribution to Sally. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
I'd like to thank all the officers for all the work they do for all of us during the year. I'd also like to thank the elections team for all the hard work, all the people that sat on polling stations for God knows how long. Really, really onerous task, but very important one. So our thanks go out to them. I usually say it every year. And this is a new municipal year. And my goodness me, Councillor Boschall, I do hope that the City Mayor adopts you again, because we heard for the first time positivity. This is what we want to hear. This is what people want to hear. Positive things that we're doing. I think you only mentioned cups once, it was just briefly. You see, it's totally thrown me. Yeah. I was ready to respond to the usual tirade, but no, I think that is the way forward, and I really thank you for that speech. Yeah. There was an awful lot of positivity in it, and that, for my own personal view, and I'm sure most of you would rather sit here and hear that than the usual diatribe that we get. So I hope Councillor Dennett, not Councillor, City Mayor, wherever you may be, and I hear you're a long way away, tune into the webcast and see how it should be done. Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not going to spoil it unless you want to attack me later. But because first of all, I want to say to Councillor Boschall, I thought it was a very good speech in terms of outlining some of the issues. But of course, this is the AGM, and it doesn't necessarily excuse the government from some of the criticisms that I'm sure will come off later. But I just wanted to add something very briefly to it, which I think is a mark of how well respected this City Council under Mayor Dennett and others are considered across the country. There is something called the Key Cities Group, which stretches from Bournemouth to Sunderland and includes all the key urban areas that are not core cities like Manchester and so forth. They've set up a commission on economic growth, and they've asked me to chair that particular commission on economic growth, which will entail us discussing with Greg Clark, if he's still part of the government after Brexit, of course, about the industrial strategy, about what we need in Salford to actually deliver on economic growth for our people. And one of the things I'm going to be quite passionate about, I'm afraid, is some of the failings of this current government in terms of dealing with transport infrastructure, in terms of dealing with land policy, in terms of dealing with the encouragement of manufacturing in this country. But I think it is an honour for Salford, nothing to do with me, frankly, although I'd like to think it was, but I think it is a mark of how well respected this City Council is across the rest of the country. I'd finally just like to make the point that, okay, let's all try and be positive, but what I would welcome, I think, is the political party who in opposition being positive about what they can do to help the people of Salford. And I hope what they don't do is simply act as apologists for this government, which we know is attacking areas like Salford with a great deal of vigour and making life more difficult for us. So by all means, let's be positive, but let's be positive Conservative Party for the people of Salford rather than simply supporting the government. Thank you.
Councillor McCusker. Sorry. It's Councillor McCusker first, then Councillor Sharp.
All right, okay.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. In receipt of the petition submitted earlier, I've got a question. Words from Mr Dunning, present at the side of the room. Mr Dunning wanted to ask the question himself in person at the start of the council meeting, but I couldn't get it through on time, and there was a couple of complications. But Mr Dunning's present, and I'll read his words for you now. Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, I am here today to present this petition and ask the council to install a crossing on Manchester Road East. I have lived in Little Woolton for 3 years, but I am a Salfordian. I know it may not seem long, but I am retired, and what I've seen of the amount of traffic on Manchester Road East in the morning and afternoon is absolutely pathetic. To walk from the nearest crossing at Cleggs Lane, and the next crossing is actually over half a mile outside Kenyon Arms at the bottom of Captain Full Road. Now we're surrounded by a lot of older people in bungalows. The only shop that people can use at night is situated on the west side of Manchester Road East. So if they want to come across to the shop, they have to dodge traffic as they have to do in the morning. Some school children have to be at school early and have to cross the road for a bus before the lollipop lady comes on duty further down the road near Top Club. If the motorway is blocked or the traffic comes off at Little Tolton to dodge the traffic on the motorway, this completely blocks the road, so they have to either take the run of death or walk approximately 500 yards to Clegg's Lane in all weathers, whereupon if the crossing was situated at the corner of Street Gate, would cover the stretch I am talking about. We are so lucky to have a lovely park, namely Peel Park. Do we ever laugh of children playing? The answer is no, because the children cannot get across the road to play in the park. The mothers are busy, they haven't the time to walk the road to cross them, but if the crossing was to happen, it would help a lot of mothers no end. I know this is not cheap, but at the end of the day, the lollipop person will retire, then what? A famous person once said, for the want of a nail, a horse was lost, and for the want of a horse, the battle was lost. So do we turn around and say, when some adult or child gets killed, we didn't bother about the crossing because it was too expensive, but it isn't our fault? I'd like to leave this with you, my dear friends. People often say, do we have to wait until there is an accident or death until we do anything? Well, there has already been an accident here, resulting in a young lad losing his leg at Christmas. This is just a reminder of how dangerous this road can be. Please can the council agree to fund the crossing at Manchester Road East to allow safer crossing and reduce risk of accidents to children, older people and others? Because, ladies and gentlemen, how much is a life worth? Thank you for your time. I'd just like to add as well that the three councillors, myself, Councillor Way and Councillor Lewis, are all in support of the petition and would like to see a crossing.
Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Chair. Continuing the positivity, would the Deputy Mayor join me in congratulating Salford City Football Club in Kersal for the wonderful achievement of getting into the Football League this week. And whilst I'm sure all Kersal councillors and the council will continue to work to ensure that local residents and others are not inconvenienced by problems associated with the club, nevertheless we're very proud of them, and seeing the name Salford every week in the Football League fixtures as well as the football pools, I think would be a great fillip to Salford.
Interchange.
I put my hand up to speak and you acknowledged it. Since then, you've taken various of the people that put their hands up after me, including calling Councillor Guido and Councillor Sayer. It does not seem to be a very fair way because of debate.
Right. Councillor Guido, and I hope you have a happy evening.
And I wasn't even going to say very much, just to share. The first thing I did want to say, which is why I put my hand up first, was to actually declare an interest in relation to any housing matters that Councillor Bush shall raise. So can I now do that, and I will not be commenting on any housing matters. Secondly, there are a number of extremely important issues which I think need raising, but they need raising in the presence of the City Mayor. And there are many issues that came up during the election campaign. So I don't propose to raise any of those or even respond at this stage. I think it's the City Mayor's position to hear those comments and to respond at the next meeting. Suffice it to say that I think that he should recognise when he comes back that he lost the support of over 4,500 Labour supporters during the election, and that conversely the Conservative Party increased its majority in all 3 seats, whereas the Labour Party reduced its majorities in all seats that they held. But I'll reserve any comments until the City Mayor is present at the next meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Karen Guido.
My apologies to Councillor Robin for getting in before him, but I just wanted to ask a question of the Statutory Deputy City Mayor. In the Manchester Evening News this morning, it says that Salford Council is set to approve a loan to the stadium. Perhaps we could have some information on that, please, this morning. Thank you.
The MEN have got it. The MEN have got the information.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Boschall is a director of the Stadium Board and would need to declare interest and couldn't particularly comment on that question. So, we'll have to get you a written answer to that, if that's okay. And we will circulate
it's already in the Manchester Evening News. I think that probably the written response needs to be sooner. Unless the Inner Sanctum know more than we do, we don't know anything about this. So I really would like it done as soon as possible, because today is the annual general meeting. We've not made any cabinet places. I think as a strategic deputy city mayor, I think that the city mayor should have actually delegated that to her, and I'm a bit concerned about that. And I'm concerned when I read in the paper monies that are being loaned again to a stadium, and perhaps on the back of what Councillor Saunders said, perhaps we should be looking at selling this to the new Salford Football Club.
So, right, thank you. I am a director, but to give a broader response, we did have regular meetings with the opposition to update them on the situation of the stadium. We've advised them that the interest we receive exceeded any loan that we actually paid to them. We do have a meeting later today. After this meeting, I'm happy to update you on the situation. I do think the Manchester Evening News have been quite clear really about what the loan was regarding. It was 120k, and that was regarding a CPO, the fees for the CPO for land around the stadium. But I'm absolutely happy to update you. Just referring to the City Mayor and him not being here. The City Mayor, as you know, is passionate about Salford. He's passionate about promoting Salford, not just across GM, not just in the UK, but also internationally. And that's what he's doing today. Thank you.
Councillor Lancaster.
Get away with the statement which has just been made. The loan isn't for the stadium, the loan is for development land which is round the stadium. And I'll tell you this, and this may get a shock to some people, but I think I'm in order in saying it. United Utilities CPO of the land was fighting that CPO cost us nearly enough £500,000. Now that was not the stadium's fault, that was the cost of the United Utilities did the diverting a drain right across the site and the development site which is round. On top of that, and we've got to quote this, the Coal Board have got a lease on the land in question for development which cost us £100,000 to buy out. So the money is not being to subsidise the stadium, the money is being utilised so we can get the development land which the council will benefit from that development takes place. But I'm sick to death of the stadium getting blamed for things which are out of our control.
Point of information, Chair, those matters are matters relating to the City of Salford Stadium Company, not monies that were paid out by the council.
Councillor Antrobus.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if I could perhaps just respond to the issues that Councillor Sharp has raised on behalf of Mr Dunning. There's no doubt that there is an issue at that particular juncture within the city. The 5-year collision history shows that in the vicinity of the Stocksfield Drive there have been 4 collisions, 3 of which have been serious, and so it's something that the City Council need to attend to, and I'm grateful to Mr Dunning for raising this issue, drawing it to our attention. The ward councillors in Little Halton have already used their influence to spend money from the devolved budget to commission a survey to look at what would be the best solution in that area, what sort of crossing it would be, and where precisely it should be located. So I think that Mr Dunning can be reassured that the ward councillors are acting on his behalf and that on behalf of the wider community. It is costly to provide a crossing. But recently the City Council gave planning permission to development of Brackley Golf Course, and as part of that there was a Section 106 agreement which required the developers to fund improvements to the accessibility of the new development to Peel Park, and that includes £150,000 earmarked for a crossing, a signal controlled crossing at this point. So there is some opportunity there once the development takes place to secure that funding to deliver the proposal. But of course, if we can identify funds in the meantime to bring that proposal forward, I can give the guarantee that I will work with ward councillors to do that.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you. I'm just sitting here seething really at the comments about wanting to have positive conversation here. Yes, we do want to have positive conversation, and my suggestion is if we're going to have more positive conversation, perhaps the Conservative group could start by asking their government to give local government back the money that is taken away from us. When we have to sit here considering whether we can afford a crossing where people have been injured and harmed, we shouldn't have to be sitting thinking about whether we can afford that. The money should be there for something like that. But because the pressure this government is on, this council is under, because of the money that has been taken away by central government, we do have to start considering seriously where our priorities are. That should be a priority. That crossing should absolutely be a priority. We shouldn't have to be thinking about it twice. It is central government that has put us in a position where we have to think about it twice. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Fletcher.
I'd like to welcome all the new members to the council today, but there's one in particular, apart from Jim, who's working, Councillor Kamel, who'll be working with myself and Councillor Dickman in Swinton South, and that one I really want to welcome is Councillor Shalmina August. She has actually made history because she's the first Muslim councillor in the city of Salford. And as I look around, it is good to see a little bit more diversity in councillors than when I started 3 years ago. But I do hope in the future there'll be even more diversity, because after all, we need to be totally representative of our city of Salford. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Morris, thank you for your contribution. Councillor Turner, it is the AGM. I have tried to be very positive today, but do remember that this is under a Labour administration, and I'm sure the City Mayor would want me to remind you at this point that we've had £211 million worth of cuts. Personally, I miss the passion of the City Mayor in the speech today, and he is passionate because he cares a great deal about the people in Salford, and I hope that next time service will return to normal. Councillor Sharp, it's really good to welcome Mr Dunning today, and I thank Councillor Antrobus for responding to the concerns there. I hope that Mr Dunning is reassured that we're looking at doing everything we can to get us a crossing in that particular area. My congratulations also to Salford City Football Club and Councillor Garrido. You don't have to wait till the next meeting to have a discussion with the City Mayor. His door is often open, as you've said. We can arrange a meeting at any time where you want to raise any issues you have with him. Councillor Lewis, thank you for your comments, really welcomed. And again, 211 million, phenomenal amount. It is because we've got a Labour administration, and it is because we're caring about the most vulnerable in our society that we've been able to give a positive report today. Councillor Fletcher, completely support your comments and also want to welcome Shamina. Thank you.
I now suspend the council for 10 minutes break. Item 15, general questions or comments to Cabinet members on the discharge of responsibilities within their portfolio. We've not received any questions with notice, therefore I'll go through the names individually for each Cabinet member as listed on the Council agenda. Councillor Paula Bushell, Councillor John Merry,
Councillor Walsham.
Cam Walsham,
the government have announced that they will fund the public and private removal of cladding from tower blocks, which is good news for those residents that live in them. Yet the residents in Pendleton are being treated disgracefully, as this government is still refusing to fund the removal of cladding to our tower blocks in the PFI scheme. Can the Deputy Mayor comment on this, giving those residents in the PFI blocks and the Langworthy Ward councillors an update on what this means, plus the current situation, re the removal of the cladding and any remedial works that are going to be done? Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Paula Bushell.
Right, thank you. Before I reply to that, there was one thing I meant to say earlier, which is in the spirit of positivity, I wanted to say something nice about Councillor Saunders, if he doesn't mind. Although I appreciate there might be some difficulty about it. We've had a very nasty outbreak of measles in my ward and in the adjoining ward. Now, anybody who's seen the effects of measles will know that it is not a good disease for people to actually get. And the problem we have is, of course, the low levels of vaccination, particularly, if I may say so, in the Jewish community. Now, Councillor Saunders, in his day job, as it were, right, has spoken out about this, and I want to reinforce what he said of urging all members of the Jewish community and others to get vaccinated, quite frankly. Councillor Saunders is more of an authority on this than me, but I understand there is no reason why people should not get vaccinated, and in fact every reason to protect young children that they should get vaccinated. There you are, that's my contribution for being nice to Tories, my entire contribution to being nice to Tories. But I want to say something, if I may, about what Councillor Warmisham has asked for, because I want you all to cast your sort of minds back to an issue that the three Langworthy Ward councillors have been fighting for the last 12 months since Grenfell, quite frankly. If you remember, this council was prepared to act very, very quickly to lend the necessary money to get the work done on the blocks as quickly as possible. And then we had what we should have realised was going to be the attitude of the government over Brexit, actually, which is, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure, and we're not sure whether you should be able to lend the money, or we'll have to ask the Treasury and we'll have to talk it all through. And in the meantime, we're all going to go on holiday while this issue's being considered. And month after month, we sat here, right, waiting for authorisation from the Treasury to actually spend our money on those blocks to get it sorted. And eventually the message came through, and Councillor Warmisham probably remembers this vividly, when they said, not only are we not keen on this, we actually forbid you from lending the money in this particular instance. And you know what the reason they gave was? Because it's unfair on the private sector. That's what the reason they gave at that moment in time. Now we're in a sort of Alice in Wonderland situation, and it's great for those people who are in private sector blocks, and I fully support what the government is doing in respect of that, don't get me wrong. But what I want them to do is to look at the PFI situation, because what we had to do was negotiate a deal with PTOL in order to ensure that they had put up the money in order to do it. And that's going through, and I'm glad it's going through. And to answer your question, Councillor Warmisham, tenders are being evaluated as we speak in order that the work could be done. But they also had the nerve to tell us, well, we don't think that the scheme applies to you because you're not a private sector scheme. So we're not a public sector scheme when it suits them. We're not a private sector scheme when it suits them. Quite frankly, they've actually betrayed the people of this particular area. They've refused to take their particular concerns into account. And I just wonder if that's because there isn't a great deal of votes in it, because of the fact that that area, I'm delighted to say, votes solidly Labour. So for all of those reasons, I think, pleased that they're advancing the money to the private sector. I think it's an absolute disgrace that they've made it clear it does not apply to the PFI. And I urge every member of the council, whatever political party they are from, to continue to point out to the government the error of their ways in saying it's one thing when it suits us and it's another thing when it doesn't suit us. And I think it's an absolute disgrace for the people of Salford.
Councillor Owen Guido.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit saddened that Councillor Merry has taken the attitude that he's taken. I sit on Growth and Prosperity, along with a number of Labour members. And as a united body, we have pursued this issue, meeting after meeting after meeting. And I have to say that I think I'm right in saying, and I'll be correct if I'm wrong, that most of us have been concerned at the way that it has been dealt with. And I'm not just talking about the government, I'm talking about the way we as a council have dealt with this. But if we go back to the beginning, this is a PFI authorised by Blair, by the Labour government, and it proves it was probably the wrong way to actually do this. Many other councils up and down the country have managed to do similar schemes without getting involved in PFIs. Did we have the right? I'm talking about this particular PFI as it relates to Pendleton, and that wasn't John Major, it was Mr. Blair. And Mr. Blair was the architect of many other PFIs, including all our schools, which now cost a fortune if the community wants to use them, but that's another matter. I'm concerned, in fact, that I think that we as a council dragged our feet to start with. I don't think we acted quickly enough. I don't think, as far as PSOL were concerned, that we put sufficient pressure on them. As far as I'm concerned, if they were a private company, right, which you don't presume that they are as the ones that actually put the money up in the first place, then they are the ones that should have been pressured to give the money, not necessarily the government. You know, it's always, as far as this council is concerned, it's always the government must give this, the government must give that. Well, in this case, it's PSOL who should have given the money, and that's the end of it, right? We did try and sort it out. Unanimously, this council did agree on a loan, right? But it was not legally possible, as I understand it, to use that loan on, for a company that privately financed that particular block or those particular blocks. Therefore, the pressure had to be on PSOL. I don't think that we put sufficient pressure as a council on them, and I think that's where the fault lies. But many other councils up and down the country have been able to deal with this. Many, in fact, in this city, we've seen many blocks actually already dealt with. Even when we talk about sprinkler systems now, right, it's taken so long to actually get a plan put together, but other organisations have been able to do it literally within weeks or months. So I think this council has to accept a lot of blame about what actually happened with these blocks. The way those people have been treated, and I think it's actually diabolical that you refer to there being no votes in for the Conservatives. That's a terrible statement to make, right? And I think you should take that back, and I think you should apologise, because this is not about votes, this is about doing what is right for the local people. People who've had windows falling out of their blocks, and this council not even recognising that, and not even getting the windows put back in. We've got people in those blocks who've been ignored by this council. People who have asked to have meetings, and meetings which never took place, or in fact they weren't told about. So it's about time you recognise your responsibilities, you looked after the people in those blocks, they deserve better, and this council has not treated them in the way that it should have done.
Councillor Murray.
Meetings with some of the most vociferous critics. I've met with those people. It's not true that windows have fallen out. There have been issues around the balcony, and it is an absolute disgrace, and he should withdraw those remarks, right? Because I have met with Graham, right? I have met with him. He submitted a series of questions which we provided the answers to. The ward councillors have dealt with him. The mayor has dealt with him, and he should withdraw that last remark. But of course he won't, right? Because the reality of the situation is that this government is not interested in the people of this particular area. And Councillor Garrido reaping crocodile tears over the effect on those particular tenants doesn't cut the mustard as far as I'm concerned. As far as I'm concerned, we're dealing with the issues about workmanship and so forth on those blocks. And do you know what the solution was? Which he apparently supported from the government, that we should place the entire project into liquidation and take over the costs of providing that project ourselves. That's what the Treasury suggested we do. And the effect of that upon the ordinary tenants who actually argued for the PFI, who supported the PFI, would be severe, right? It would mean no more money for any more work in that particular area. So, as far as I'm concerned, I made a perfectly valid point, and I will continue to make it on behalf of the people. And it's all very well arguing about how long it's taken and all the rest of it. Do you know what the biggest cause of delay was? That they sat on it for 6 months. They sat on our proposal for the 6 months while they debated it and argued between the department that's responsible for local government and the Treasury. If it was illegal, then somebody could have looked it up in some sort of statute and said, no, I'm sorry, according to this section you can't do it. That takes about a week. I think personally our city solicitor could have dealt with it in a day. But no, 6 months was required for them to make up their minds. And that's the real reason. And I think, sorry, Councillor Garrido, you're an amiable guy, but you're sometimes placed in an impossible situation of trying to defend impossible behaviour by your government. This is one of these examples when you should come clean and say your government has failed to deliver for the people of Salford and you apologise on their behalf.
Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Mary. I just want to add, because I'm very angry at some of the comments that have been bandied about from the other side. That community has been supported. They've been kept informed right through the process. Councillor Warmesham, Councillor Guranziza and myself have done several surgeries for every block with the MP and one of the MP's senior caseworkers. So every resident has had the opportunity to speak to all ward councillors over this and the MP and their concerns raised and addressed. We've also had a public meeting which I have to say was hijacked predominantly by people from outside Salford that didn't live in Salford, that were nowhere near Salford, and that meeting was not productive, and that is the reason that we have not had a repeated series of public meetings, because I don't think they're the best forum to address this issue. But we have had personal meetings, we visited people in their flats, we've spoken to people constantly throughout the last couple of years. So that community is being supported.
Councillor Lewis.
I just felt I had to respond to Councillor Garrido's comments, because obviously he raised the issue about the committee that I chair, and it does bother me extremely that you have appeared to turn something our aspirations as a committee into a political hot potato. We have welcomed residents to come and provide us with context about their lives and their experiences of that living in those places. We have welcomed them, we have encouraged them, we have provided them with a voice and to help us in our decision making. Procedures have been followed properly, and I have to give credit to Councillor Merry because he has done everything we have asked him to as a panel. And to suggest there is some criticism there is absolutely incorrect. We have been totally fair on that committee. It is always difficult when the public come along with their passions and their personal experiences, but I feel that as a committee we have dealt with it absolutely appropriately, and I am very satisfied that Councillor Merry has done everything he can.
I went to great lengths to say that Growth and Prosperity, I believe to every single member, dealt with this extremely well. Right? What I did say, in fact, is that it was the council via the senior officers who had not dealt with this in the right way. So Growth and Prosperity, I did not criticise. I think Growth and Prosperity dealt with it in an extremely fair way, and you cannot get away from the fact that those people came to our meeting, members of the public, critical of being ignored and of things not being done, and that's a matter of record.
Personal explanation as well. Right, on point of personal explanation, you made a direct statement that people had been refused meetings. That's what was refuted, and I still haven't heard a withdrawal of that remark because you made reference to the Growth and Prosperity Committee, and my understanding of your remark was clearly that those issues had not been dealt with, and I think that's what Councillor Lewis was replying to.
As you all know, this has been dealt with outside here, because verbatim, people on the outside are watching this. I'm not going to comment any further than that. Thank you.
Just to finish, because I think I've made my point. The point was that that committee, which is a non-political committee, has done everything in its power to address the issues that are raised. Sometimes those issues are raised because of misunderstandings or miscommunication, but we have endeavoured to do everything to make sure any member of the public who comes to that committee and voices their concerns is given a voice and is listened to. Thank you.
Councillor Bill Hines.
Questions?
No, questions too. Yeah. Well, are there any questions? No, if there's no question to Councillor Bill Hines, we'll move to Councillor Tracy Kelly. Thank you. Councillor Derek Antrobus, any questions?
Councillor Nelson, I think.
Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. I firstly want to say, as a newly elected and first-time councillor, thank you to the people of Cadishead Ward for putting their faith in me. I'll work every day to best represent my community to the best of my ability. Following warnings to the UN that we have 11 years left to stop irreversible damage to our planet, and parallel warnings from naturalists that we are facing a sixth mass extinction, it's been really, truly inspirational to see a movement of many thousands of young people over the last month coming together, saying enough is enough and change is needed now before it is too late. I give solidarity to them and feel it is the duty of all of us here to hear their calls and act where possible. Now, here in Salford, we are blessed with several square miles of mossland, most of which in Cadishead Ward in Chat Moss. Peat bog, as we know, is more efficient at capturing carbon than forest. So I ask Councillor Antrobus, what is the City Council doing to restore more mossland as peat bog?
Okay. Councillor Camel.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for the technical delay. I was going to say, firstly, can I say how proud I am to be elected to represent the residents of Swinton South. Secondly, I'll just explain the pronunciation of my name is Kamel, for those who aren't aware. I myself am a resident of Swinton South, and one of the biggest issues we have had in the ward in recent times is that many residents are unhappy with the Bellway Homes development on the old Swinton sewage works site. Their issues include loss of what had become green space despite being classified as a brownfield site, increased traffic and associated air pollution in what is an already heavily congested area, concerns about provision of services such as school places, doctors and dentists, as well as complaints that the developers are working outside of their agreed times, with heavy goods vehicles regularly arriving early or leaving late, causing more distress to those living on the single access route, which has been one of the main concerns raised by the residents of the existing estate, particularly along Thorn Road and Campbell Road. Last month, rumours started circulating on social media that Bellway had bought Swinton Park Golf Club for the sum of £31 million, subject to planning permission being granted to build houses on the site. I first saw a post about this myself on the 12th of April. On the 15th of April, our City Mayor Paul Dennett wrote to the committee of Swinton Park Golf Club stating that if the committee or a house builder are looking to advance a proposal for housing development on the site, then they need to know that the city's starting position will be that this well-established golf course should remain as a golf course. This will be supported by the council's planning policies. The City Mayor also asked the committee to clarify their intentions regarding the future of the golf course, and to my knowledge they did not respond. On the 23rd of April, a meeting was held at St Luke's Church on Swinton Park Road. Over 200 people attended, mostly members and users of the golf club, or concerned local residents. Those present were unanimous in their support to keep the golf club as a golf club and not to let it become a housing development. On the 30th of April, a statement was issued to members of Swinton Park Golf Club from the Board of Directors, clarifying that an exclusivity agreement had been agreed with Bellway Homes Limited to grant them the opportunity to discuss planning with the Salford Planning Authority regarding development of the course. On the 12th of May, a concerned resident wrote to Rebecca Long Bailey regarding the Swinton Park Golf Club and sent copies of the letter via email to most councillors across the city. The letter was also published on social media. Yesterday, Chris Finley, our Assistant Director of Planning, responded to the resident, and a copy of his response was sent to myself and selected other members. His response states, "No planning application for housing development has been submitted for redevelopment of Swinton Park Golf Club. The golf club is entirely under private ownership. We were aware from reports in the press that the golf club was making decisions about its future, but we were not involved in any of those discussions as a council. Within the last week, Bellway have met with myself," this is Chris Finley still, "and a number of other offices to talk about the planning position on the site. The site is unallocated as it is an existing recreational facility, and there have never been any intention to promote it for development. That position remains the case in the city's draft local plan, which we consulted on earlier this year. The site is protected by general policies relating to the protection of existing recreation and leisure facilities in Salford's Unitary Development Plan. It is our understanding that Bellway are exploring the site's potential for development, and we cannot prevent them from testing the City Council's policy position by submitting a planning application. We have outlined them to the City's planning policy position, and particularly the high bar set by Policy R1, protection of recreation, land and facilities. My question was originally going to be whether the Council had any contact from Bellway Homes Limited regarding the potential development of Swinton Park Golf Course. However, I now know that that is the case. So I would like to ask Councillor Antrobus if he could please explain in layman's terms the protections the golf club has under Salford's Unitary Development Plan and what the high bar set by policy R1 is, and also request that the ward councillors, specifically of Swinton South, where the club is located, and neighbouring Claremont, are kept fully up to date with any further developments regarding a planning application. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question I'm directing to Councillor Antrobus, but I know that he might like to defer it to the Executive Support for Transport, Councillor Jones. I'm extremely disappointed and angry about the announcement from the Conservative government about that Access for All funding to make local train stations step-free. TFGM created a priority list for stations which require step-free access, and Walkden was classed as #1 priority. This had a clear and strong evidence base for this decision. Despite this, Walkden was not selected by the Conservative government. Unsurprisingly, the Conservative government has cut the budget for Access for All. Congestion is an issue across the country, and we desperately need our government to invest in transport infrastructure, and the North in particular needs far better rail services. Instead, we've been left with the Access for All system where towns are left to bid against each other to prove why our community is more in need of step-free access than our neighbouring town. It's a disgrace, and it's an absurd method of the desperate highway infrastructure that we need in this country and public transport. Walkden has been left again another part of funding inaccessible to so many in our community. My understanding is this funding is for 2019 to 2025, and I'm very saddened, and I really hope that something changes before 2025 and we're not left again for so long with so many that can't get on a train. The bid for funding also included plans for the station car park, which the council have given land for. Parking around the station is desperate. There's a lot of terraces in that area, and as you all know, you'll all represent areas with terraces. Parking's a problem. Imagine that with commuters that want to get to work every single day and don't want to queue on the East Lancs or the M60. We now need to be looking at funds to get the car park built as soon as possible, even potentially looking at simply opening the gates. The land's a former council depot. It's literally parking spaces that are just locked. Will you commit to an urgent meeting to discuss the future of the station car park with Councillor Critchley and I, and also what can be done going forward to ensure that Walkden becomes an accessible station as soon as possible? Thank you.
Councillor Robin Guido.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I say that I support wholeheartedly what Councillor Edwards has just said in relation to Walkden Station. Both Councillor Jones and myself have pushed repeatedly for this station as members of TFGM, and Councillor Edwards is quite right, it was top of the list. I think that was due to the work that Councillor Jones has done and other members of TFGM. So I'm extremely concerned that it hasn't been approved, and certainly as far as the Conservative opposition is concerned, we will be taking that matter up as well with the government, and we would be pressing very hard for that decision to be reversed. So I made it very clear. The same applies to car parking. I think it's a ridiculous situation that we have a station, in fact, that could resolve a lot of the congestion in that area. You've only got to go down Walkden Road at any rush hour. You can't move from the A6 right the way down to Mersey Roundabout. You know, the way we could resolve that would be car parking at Walkden Station so people can use the train. So wholeheartedly support the comments of Councillor Edwards. Now, I just need to come back, and this will be a question as Councillor Antrobus, but I understand what Councillor Kamal is saying, and in fact, if we take that on face value, when we say that that's good, that protects that piece of land as it should be protected. The problem.
Is it appropriate for members of the opposition to answer questions?
No, it's not. No.
Lead members.
Is this a question?
No, well, can I make a point? Well, the people that are listening can't, on the videos, on the TV. We regularly at council agenda setting meetings get complaints about the time that the meeting takes and that we go through questions to lead members, and I'm always at the bottom and regularly don't get asked the question because of the time that's taken. Looking at the size of the council, did a quick calculation. Based on the number of councillors that we had, if we were to do it fairly, and we're not suggesting that we do this, that the Labour Party would have 101 minutes of our 2 hours speaking time. The Independents would have 2 minutes, and the Conservatives would have 16 minutes. I'd suggest that, not suggesting that they limit themselves to 16 minutes, but I would suggest that Councillor Garrido thinks about the time that he's taking of that before they complain about the time that's taken by other people speaking.
Councillor Garrido needs to ask the question. Thank you.
Okay, I'll carry on with my question if Councillor Ferguson would like to listen. In view of the remarks made by Councillor Carroll, that the land appears to be protected because of its recreational status, can Councillor Antrobus confirm that although quite recently a piece of recreational land in Boostown of the policy R1 class of recreation, that this council allowed a planning application to be approved? Therefore, is policy R1 strong enough to actually protect this piece of land, bearing in mind that you have gone against that policy in the last 12 months?
Councillor Antrobus.
Thank you very much, Chair. With regards to Councillor Camel's question, I just want to challenge one thing that he said in his opening remarks. I think it's fair to say that residents were concerned about the loss of open space, but we should not forget that that development turns a polluted sewage works into one of our best nature parks in the city. It's a net improvement in public open space, and we shouldn't let the wrong-headed distortion of what has happened there to come into our discourse. You know, that is a total benefit in terms of open space for the people of that area. The Swinton Sewage Works was not public open space, it was fenced off. Admittedly, people broke down the fences and entered, trespassed onto the land, but the land was polluted, and people who had care for their children or dogs, quite frankly, should not have been using that land. So I regard that as a net benefit. With regards to the question, there is not currently a planning application that has been submitted. Bellway Homes did approach the City Council and spoke to our officers to ascertain the planning status of the site, and Councillor Kamel has quite rightly read out the restrictions currently within the local plan, and it's been indicated to the developers that there is a very high bar in terms of policy R1, which protects open space which is allocated for recreational purposes from future development. It is a high bar, but as with all planning policies, the City Council has to give weight to a whole variety of issues and needs to consider the weight of that policy as against other policies. It also needs to take account of the detail of the policy, and the detail of the policy involves making a judgment about whether or not the land is needed for future recreational purposes. And as Councillor Greedo will recall, the instance in Boothstown, it was very clear from the evidence that it was not needed in that way, and therefore policy R1 was not applied. But in this case, the circumstances will be very different, and the planning panel will look at the evidence of the need for the land. We will consult with all those people affected, and we will also make sure that we consult with Sports England and all the other bodies and use any evidential base should a planning application be submitted at some time in the future. But at the moment there is no planning application, and we should not make any judgments at this stage about those things. The second point that I wanted to make was in response to Councillor Nelson. Very much welcome Councillor Nelson joining the City Council. It's absolutely fantastic for someone who is as enthusiastic as I am about lowland peat bog restoration. I never thought that I'd have a soulmate on the City Council who shared my passion for this. Before you can actually restore peat bog, then you've actually got to stop it from being exploited, from being degraded. And in 2012, Salford City Council won a landmark case against developers who wanted to continue peat extraction at 12 Yards Road, and our decision to refuse that planning permission was upheld. And it was upheld against, I have to say, a lot of the legal advice and a lot of the pressure from big developers to go ahead with this. As a result of that decision, the city saves 12,100 tonnes of carbon dioxide a year, the equivalent of taking 6,722 cars off the road. And that, I think, illustrates the point that Councillor Nelson was making about the importance of peat bogland for as a carbon sink. Following that decision, the City Council led the, and I think Councillor Mashiter jointly represented Salford alongside me on the Greater Manchester Minerals Plan. And in the Greater Manchester Minerals Plan, it was Salford who proposed that, a clause in that plan which effectively prevented further peat extraction on the Mosslands. So Salford has led the way in preventing further degradation of the Mosslands. The Local Nature Partnership for Greater Manchester, on which I'm actually the only local government representative from the whole of Greater Manchester, secured the first nature improvement area in Greater Manchester in 2013, and that was the Mosslands. So because of that, we were able to make sure that it was identified as an area of importance, and we opened up discussions with the Lancashire Wildlife Trust to use this new status to secure funding in order to allow further restoration. And as a result of that, Lancashire Wildlife Trust has been able to attract £1.9 million through a variety of sources, including the National Heritage Lottery Fund, and another £330,000 from the government's Peatland Fund to proceed with restoration in this area. So Salford has been nationally at the forefront of lowland peat bog restoration. And in 2017, of course, we launched the Carbon Landscapes project using the Heritage Lottery Fund money. Our city mayor is a champion for that project, and that project is not just about reclaiming the degraded bogland for the people, for the environment of the world, but it's also about opening up those areas to the people. So for too long they've been regarded as a desolate wild place that people don't go to. We want to open up the magic of these areas to the people of the city. And of course, more recently, the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework includes a policy on the peatlands which protects the 2,750 hectares of I'm an enthusiast for this, so I'm going to plough on and ask for the suspension of standing orders if I'm not allowed to continue, because this is a pretty long-term thing, because we're talking about future generations here. And the GMSF actually protects that peatland for the 2,750. So I'm proud of the work that this council has done to stop the degradation of the peatland on Barton Moss, but also to make sure that we start to restore it to help the environment for future generations, but also to open it up to the people of the city of Salford. The final question from Councillor Edwards, I will defer to Councillor Jones on that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Antrobus. I know Councillor Edwards feels very strongly about Walkden Station, and all the Walkden councillors, I must say, have been shouting at me quite a lot recently, and I don't blame them. Just in terms of the background, because members here who are not on the Transport Committee won't necessarily know what's been going on in Greater Manchester, but if you go back to about mid-2018, we had a report to the Transport Committee. Barry Warner was there and Robin Greedo and myself, and we listed the stations that didn't have step-free access or had ramps that were too steep and needed to be dealt with. And we found ourselves with over half the railway stations in Greater Manchester that needed that work doing. So in round terms, you can work it out for yourself. I think there's 96 railway stations in Greater Manchester, and nearly half of them haven't got full access for disabled people. And I think we all agree, just take the party politics, it's a shameful situation. You can't put it in any other way. And the responsibility has to be put clearly at the door of Network Rail, because they own the stations and they are responsible, and the rail operator in our case. Obviously it differs across the northwest of England and across Greater Manchester, but nevertheless Network Rail own the stations. They're the ones who should have done this work, and we're miles, years and years behind where we are. But nevertheless, back in 2018, when we did agree the long list of 20, what we were delighted with, I'm talking now about Barry and Robin and myself, is that Walkden came out number 1, Swinton came out number 2, and Earlham came out number 4. And you've got to admit, that was a great result from our point of view. But again, it's wrong if I don't point out that Eccles wasn't there, Patricroft wasn't there, Moorside wasn't there. So we've got issues in Salford on our railway stations where, you know, because if I brought the people who use Eccles Station all the time, they would feel just as passionately as Councillor Edwards about their situation. But nevertheless, coming back to that list, the fact that we've got 3 Salford stations in the top 5, we were very hopeful. So when we put a bid in for the Access for All, which is a bid to government, we thought we were going to get at least 3 or 4 stations, and we thought the government would follow, you know, that priority list. Now what they did, they decided they would choose 73 railway stations across England Of the 73 they chose, there were 2 in Greater Manchester. One was Daisy Hill in Bolton and one was Earlham. And jokes aside, because I'm an Earlham councillor, I was not disappointed that Earlham was on the list. But as soon as it was announced, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be in trouble now, because the government didn't follow the list that we gave them. We asked them to put Walkden and Swinton as the top 2 priorities. That was not just what we thought, that was what Greater Manchester thought at the Transport Committee. Now, since the government have made that announcement, as far as I know, we've never had an explanation of how they arrived at that list. But if you go on the website for DFT, they talk about nominations from the rail industry, nominations from local authorities, other stakeholder involvement, annual footfall, disability in the area, local factors such as nearby hospitals, third-party funding, preference of the train operating company, a fair geographical spread. In other words, if parts of England weren't getting anything, that they were added to the list. So only a government minister can answer Councillor Edwards about why they chose to ignore Walkden, and yet they picked on projects that were lower down on the list from a Greater Manchester point of view. In direct answer to Councillor Edwards, she said, would we have an urgent meeting? Yes, I along with the Salford City Mayor, we are very keen to deal with Walkden Station, not just the accessibility issue, but as you know, we reserve land near the station for a car park. And of course that land costs a lot of money. We could have done other things with it, but the council decided that the station was a priority, and we're still waiting now some years later, and no action has been taken because the funding hasn't been there, and we've not been able to persuade either the government or TFGM to find that funding. So what I will say to Councillor Edwards is you don't have to persuade the Salford City Mayor or myself that you're the #1 priority in terms of Walkden Station, because you are. But the thing that we do have to determine, and I'm looking at the officers as much as I'm looking at members, is we've got to find a business case and the money to do that station, both on the disabled access side and on the car parking, because I'm absolutely sure, Earlham's a good example. The minute Earlham Station was refurbished, we put on massive patronage at Earlham Station, which is no doubt one of the reasons it was chosen, you know, for the accessibility issues, because of the massive increase in footfall. But I've no doubt at all that if Walkden were given similar treatment, they too would see that massive increase in footfall too. So you have all the assurance you have, Councillor Edwards, that we will press it as hard as we possibly can.
Thank you. Now we've got 2 more on this particular list. Lead member for Adult Services, Health and Wellbeing, and lead member for Workforce. And as quite well has been said, we often miss out with the last one. And after that, I'm going to 19 bring that forward, because otherwise we're not going to finish the agenda, which is quite normal, quite honestly. And Councillor Gina Reynolds, lead member for Adult Services, Health and Wellbeing. Any questions?
Councillor Lightner. Councillor.
And if you can, keep the questions as short as possible, otherwise...
Councillor Lightner and Councillor August.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Merry for highlighting the importance of the measles vaccinations. The outbreak was prominently in his ward and my ward. However, last month at the Children's Scrutiny Panel, I asked for an update on the outbreak, and the attending officer replied that, as far as the council were concerned, the outbreak had finished and was no longer a concern for this council. Can we have some clarification, please?
Right, thank you, Councillor Lightner. I mean, that's not my understanding of it. The public health team under Bev Wasp have been providing support in your community. As I say, predominantly in Broughton, Kersal wards. Extra clinics have been put on, immunisation clinics. They've been speaking with members of the community, liaising with the GPs in the area. So I'm under the understanding that that work's still going on and working very closely with the Jewish community in your wards. I will go back to the officers within the public health team just to get an update of what's currently, you know, continuing in your area.
Councillor August.
First, I'd like to thank the people of Eccles for putting their faith in me and for choosing me to represent them. I'd like to also thank Councillor Fletcher for very kind words earlier on. I'm very proud to be the first Muslim councillor here in Salford, and I hope that the diversity of the council will just continue to grow. I will try and keep my comment very brief because we are running out of time, but I just wondered, given that it's Mental Health Awareness Week and the statistics that Councillor Boschel mentioned earlier, if there were an update on the services for mental health and mental health in general in Salford. Thank you.
Councillor August, and can I give my congratulations to you and welcome you to the council. I'm going to pass this on to Councillor Jane Hamilton because Councillor Hamilton, as my deputy, is leading currently on mental health and sits on some boards relating to mental health.
Thanks, Gina. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Shamina. Thank you. I'll keep this as brief as possible as well. I know time's going on. I am going to be positive. It is about the council, not the government. And I just want to respond back to what Councillor Boschel was saying before in a little bit more detail of what the council is achieving and the great work that we're doing. The council and its partners are working hard to bring these issues to the fore and to the publication of the All-Age Mental Health Commissioning Strategy. It outlines the vision for a city which has good mental health, and the key themes include a good start in life, a family approach to mental and emotional well-being, and the ability to adapt and manage adversity and recognition of the wider factors affecting mental health, which are supported throughout the life course, from preparing for a new baby into adulthood and throughout older age. Salford continues to invest in mental health. Spending in 2018-19 was around £50.2 million on mental health services, and it's been agreed that we will continue to increase spend by a minimum of 1.5 million over the next 2 years. Outside of Manchester, Salford invests more per head of the population, not only in Greater Manchester but across the whole of the North West, and invests more than the national average, spending 2 million more per 100,000 population than the national average. And just to give you a snapshot of the work being developed in Salford, we have exceeded expectations in many areas and are held as best practice in Greater Manchester in relation to many areas of work, including our children and young people, community eating disorders, being used as a benchmark for the Greater Manchester Review. Our children, young people, LGBT working group and their action plans are influencing national research and commissioning guidance and seeking to further expand our youth service provision, which I know is very much needed. We really need to continue this good work. Our schools programme is engaging, training and accrediting schools to provide a whole school approach to children's emotional health, ensuring designated mental health leads in schools, engaged and improved understanding and relationships with CAMHS and the wider system. Salford has been selected as one of only 4 national sites to participate in the Living Well programme, focusing on better support for adults whose needs are too complex for primary care but don't meet the criteria for secondary care mental health services, again which is a massive gap and we need more funding. Recently, it has been agreed Further investment in the early intervention of psychosis services and continued investment in the psychological therapy service. Further investment of our mental health transformation funding is with the voluntary sector as well. Collaborative approaches to suicide prevention with a focus this year on construction industries, exam stress in children and young people and bereavement support. Further evidence is suggesting agricultural workers need help as well. The suicide numbers are up there. In fact, I think numbers are up, and they are up everywhere. We need to look at every section. Recently, the nurses have said that their numbers are up. We need to look at everything. Numbers are up of suicide on everything. Finally, I would urge everyone to log on to the Shining a Light on the Suicide Web following the launch of the Greater Manchester Suicide Prevention Campaign, which seeks to raise awareness and shares various stories and information. There's also a free Save a Life 20-minute training aid, and I would urge everyone to continue to participate in that. It's fantastic. I've been asked to give those stats, but I really would. 1 minute. Oh, I thought you said 2. 1 minute left.
He did a minute ago.
Right, a minute. I better get on with it then. So, right, this very morning we had the very sad news of John Diamond from the Jeremy Kyle. And I know the Prime Minister has said she's deeply concerned. I've got to hurry up and not say what I was going to say, but in a nutshell, let's stop this short arms and deep pockets. Let's get that money, more money, into mental health services, and don't save it just for our mayor and our council staff and our officers who have done fantastic. Back it up, give some more money to mental health. Thank you.
Councillor John Ferguson.
Councillor Fletcher.
Councillor Ella Fletcher.
Thank you, Chair. This is another question for Councillor Reynolds.
Yeah, she indicated earlier.
Yes, I did. It's actually Councillor Reynolds has asked me to ask this question of her for about the last 3 meetings. Anyway, can I ask? Yeah. Nationally, the number of alcohol-dependent people has increased by 17%. But I understand that due to public health cuts, there are 11,000 fewer people in recovery services. This is very concerning. Councillor Reynolds, what is the position in Salford? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fletcher. Members are all acutely aware of the cuts to public health funding, standing nationally at 85 million. Salford's lost 3.5 million since 2015, but we have managed so far to protect our recovery services in Salford. With the leading provider for substance misuse and recovery services across Bolton, Salford and Trafford, with Greater Manchester Mental Health Trust having the contract, which is a 5-year contract that started last January. We provide community and hospital-based alcohol and drug services under the name Achieve. In the Irwell Riverside ward, that operates under the name of The Orchard, and there they're providing talking therapies, harm reduction strategies and family support groups and carers support. There's also veterans drop-in, and they also provide volunteering and training opportunities, and that provision is actually outstanding and has been for a number of years. In relation to outreach and hard-to-reach groups, the Big Life group provide that throughout the city. We also have a couple of alcohol detoxification centres with the Turning Point and the Smithfield project. Housing support is provided by Great Places Housing, and we're one of the few authorities that provide housing support in relation to drug and alcohol recovery services. And the Thomas Project, that provides support for up to 2 years for people who are undertaking a recovery programme. There's also an offer for children and young people. That's under Early Break and Holding Families programme, and they look after people between up to the age of 18 who have alcohol dependent parents. And at Salford Royal we have a high impact team with specialised trained alcohol and drug nurses. But underpinning all this, recently there's been a draft GM drug and alcohol strategy which people have been able to, there's been a consultation and people have been able to have input into, and that has 6 priorities: prevention and early intervention, which is obviously crucial, reducing drug and alcohol related harm, and building recovery in communities, which, as I say, in Salford that provision is outstanding currently. It's also about reducing drug, alcohol and related crime and disorder, and managing availability and accessibility, and also, I think importantly, establishing a diverse, vibrant and safe nighttime economy for our city. So to sum up, our completion rate for drug and alcohol services is at 38%, and unbelievably that is actually the second best nationally. So, as I say, at that level we are classed as outstanding, but clearly that has to improve. So I'd just like to say that hopefully we can sustain these services going forward, still in a climate of austerity, because we've got cuts still of around 16 million as we speak facing the council in 2021. So it's going to be becoming increasingly difficult to sustain these sorts of services, but hopefully we can.
Councillor John Ferguson, Deputy Mayor this time.
Councillor Saunders.
Councillor Saunders.
Thanks, Chair. Not necessarily directly related to Councillor Ferguson's role, but I'd like to just, if I may, ask Councillor Ferguson to reconsider what he said before about the numbers and minutes, because if you took Parliament as the role model, the opposition get more time, because this...
We are moving on.
It's not a question to his
It's not a question to Councillor Ferguson and his role.
No.
We're going to move on. I'm seeing it's been targeted at me. Very briefly, and I would say, by the way, I didn't prime Councillor Saunders to ask that question beforehand. But I have written to all of the councillors yesterday regarding the Pink Picnic, and I would encourage you to come along and show your support to the LGBT staff working for the council. One, to show the support that members, gay, straight, trans, whatever, are there and supporting them. We are looking to become an exemplar employer with Stonewall, and one of the things that they're looking for is support, demonstrable support, both from the members and the leadership team as well. So, whilst I can't tell the leadership team what to do on a Saturday morning or a Saturday afternoon, I would encourage everybody in this room to come along to the Pink Picnic on the 22nd of June.
Item 19. Presentation of Long Service Awards. Councillor Kirk. Right, he's returned.
Do you want to make your way down there?
Yeah. Councillor Derek Antimus for our long service award. First time I saw Derek, I was actually yes, yeah. Years ago. Congratulations.
Okay, yeah, you better want to talk. First of all, thank you very much. The 40 years on the council, that means that I've actually served for more years than anyone else in this council chamber alongside David Lancaster. Now whether that's a privilege, but yeah, we've had a great time over the last 40 years, and I've really enjoyed the company of the members of the council and serving alongside people. But when you get a long service award, you start to think about what service means. And we all know that when we encounter members of the public, they sometimes think that service means that you were elected to do exactly what they individually want you to. That in fact we're here to serve the whole of the community and look at all the competing interests, and sometimes that's really difficult. But serving the community and serving the city is something that we all recognise. Something that I don't think we always do recognise is that when we talk about serving the community and serving the city, it also means future generations. And very often, with an eye on the elections, perhaps sometimes we make decisions that are short term and don't think about the future. But in my role in planning, that's one of the things that I've learned is the most important thing, actually, to think about what sort of city we leave for our children and grandchildren. And we face enormous tasks ahead of us in terms of the environment, in terms of the desperate need for housing and all of those issues. And so my plea would be to everybody, long service is a great thing, but good service is the best thing, and good service means thinking about the future generations. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor David Jolly. Congratulations, David.
Thank you.
We've actually known each other for more years than I have to admit.
Okay. Right, thanks. I'd just like to reiterate everything that Derek has just said. There's risk of sounding like a valedictory address. You can thank all the officers and councillors and party members in the two wards I've represented over the years for all the help that they've been given to me. There's only 3 people here that were here when I started back in '79. The ceremonial mayor, who was a councillor alongside me in Weesward for a number of years. David Lancaster, of course, who's a permanent fixture of this council right from its very inception, and Derek himself. I also was elected on the day that Margaret Thatcher became Prime Minister, and I was also elected on the day that Robin Garrido was defeated in a ward on the same day. So Robin is the only one of the few that goes slightly before me. We're having a little bit of a dispute with Derek about who's senior, because although Derek says he's got the longest service, I am technically senior to Derek, even though I had 2 years out, because in those days you used to draw for seniority, and we did draw for seniority, and I came 2nd out of 7, he came 7th out of 7, which is why I get the phone call every year first before him as to whether I want to be married or whether it's declined. The person who was number 1 that year was George Stonehouse, who some of you may just remember, who was in his 70s, first time councillor, and we did say that in 30 years hence he'd be mayor and I'd be his deputy. Of course that never came about. But more seriously, and it does sound perhaps slightly political, from day 1 I was a councillor, the issue in this council was cuts. It was the day, the 79 election, the election of a Conservative government, and from day one, the whole issue in this council was cuts and maintaining the services that we give to the people of this city. And that's a struggle we've had all through those 40 years. Unfortunately, it's a struggle that continues. But then it's a struggle we have to continue with. So thank you very much. And I know people want their lunch in a few minutes, so that's it from me. Thank you.
Item 16. Councillor David Jolly, overview of scrutiny board.
Any questions?
Any questions? Or comments? Adrian Brockhurst, Children's Scrutiny Panel.
No.
Margaret Morris, Health and Adult Scrutiny Panel. Councillor Kate Lewis. John Mullen there?
Yes, he is on the list.
Oh, yeah, oh, really, I didn't see him. Councillor John Mullen. Kate Lewis. Growth Prosperity. Item 17. Do any members have any questions or comments?
The discharge of functions of general
Discharge of, discharge of outside bodies, isn't it? No question.
Yeah, there's a question from Councillor Shaw.
Yes, Councillor Shaw.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Coming to the end of this meeting now, and I think it'd be remiss without a mention of the Chair on his last meeting. So I'd just like to say thank you to Councillor Wilton for presiding over the last 12 months and your service as ceremonial mayor, and I'm sure the rest of the colleagues to say the same. I'd like to take this moment to thank Councillor Wilson for his service as a ceremonial mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. 18 reports from the board members. Salford Council for Voluntary Services, Councillor Edwards.
Just for noting.
Just for noting. And Bridgewater Canal Trust, Councillor Mullen. I don't believe it actually, it's going through the agenda the first time in 12 months.
Don't speak too soon.
No.
We've done
Item 19 we've already done. Item 20, dates of future meetings. Dates to be noted.
So that is now the end of
And that is the end of the meeting. Thank you for your attendance. Declare the meeting closed.